HFY Vanguard, where courage and chaos are the humanity's greatest weapons. Let the battle begin. Alan Gass had always believed that style was the last line of defense against the universe's relentless cruelty. A good jacket, the right haircut, and a winning smile could get you through doors that no plasma rifle could. That philosophy had served him well in the past, back when his ship was newer, his name carried weight in the courier circuits, and he could afford to walk into a station cantina with credits to spare. But now his ship, the Rusty Hope, was groaning like a dying animal. His wallet was emptier than a black hole, and his reputation hovered somewhere between washed up and soon-to-be space debris. Warning klaxons shrieked through the cramped cockpit, bathing everything in flashing crimson light. The cracked viewport showed stars bending as his ship's failing stabilizers shuddered. Alan slammed his palm against the control panel in frustration, as though sheer irritation could keep the Rusty Hope alive for just 5 more minutes. "Come on, baby," he muttered under his breath, sweat glistening across his forehead. "Hold it together. Just 5 more minutes." The AI chimed in, its once soothing feminine voice now corrupted by glitches. "Warning, warning. Engine core, temp, per. Exceeding safe parameters." The distortion made it sound like a drunken cat dying in a back alley. "Yeah, no kidding," Alan snapped. He wiped at his black hair, styled this morning, now matted with grease and desperation. His designer jacket, last remnant of a better past, felt suffocating in the stifling heat of the cockpit. His cargo was already 3 days late, and his client was the kind who sent bounty hunters instead of emails. Failure wasn't an option. Unfortunately, neither was success, not with the Rusty Hope coughing up its last fumes. Through the viewport, salvation loomed, the massive ring-shaped bulk of Alpha 9 Trading Station. Its docking rings glowed like halos against the light of the twin binary stars that burned beyond. To most pilots, Alpha 9 was a bustling hub of opportunity, chaos, and fortune. To Alan, it was the last possible stop before a fiery death. The docking computer emitted a pitiful chirp, trying to process commands through corrupted code. Characters scrolled across the screen in gibberish. Alan squinted, then barked a command: "Request manual override." The AI coughed static before spitting out "manual re-reum rejected, override accepted." "Make up your mind." Alan grabbed the controls, fingers dancing with practiced precision. Even with systems failing around him, this was where Alan shined. Flying was the one thing he could still do perfectly. The station's magnetic clamps rushed toward him on the viewport, and he guided his dying ship into their embrace. "Courier vessel Rusty Hope," came the voice of the docking operator, dry with alarm. "You're coming in hot. Your signature's bleeding red. Redirecting you to emergency dock 7. "Copy that, Alpha 9 Control," Alan said, with the tone of a man who just threaded a needle at the speed of light. The ship groaned, shuddered, and then slammed into place with a thunderous clang as the clamps caught. The whole vessel rattled, then fell silent, like a heart that had barely survived a seizure. "Welcome to Alpha 9, the station's cheerful automated voice sang as the docking tube sealed. "Please ensure all weapons are registered before disembarkation." Alan blew out a shaky breath, unclipped his restraints, and stood. His legs wobbled from exhaustion, but the swagger returned instantly. Image mattered. If he was going to beg for repairs, he'd do it with a smile. The docking bay of Alpha 9 was chaos incarnate. Alien merchants shouted across stalls piled high with wares from 100 worlds. The scent of sizzling food from distant planets mingled with engine grease and ozone. Maintenance bots whirred underfoot, dodging the stomps of hulking dock workers with more arms than manners. Everywhere there was movement, noise, life. Alan descended the ramp of his battered ship with his courier ID and digital wallet tucked in his pocket. The sooner he found a mechanic, the sooner he could fix the Rusty Hope before bounty hunters tracked him down. He hadn't gone 10 steps before a tentacled mechanic waved enthusiastically from a stall cluttered with tools. "Hey, pretty boy, that heap needs work, Special price for you." The mechanic's 3 mouths grinned in perfect toothy unison. Alan opened his mouth to deliver his best charming rejection, but froze when he caught sight of movement near the far side of the dock. An elderly alien woman was struggling with several ornate bags, each so finely crafted they looked more like artwork than luggage. She was tall, regal, despite her bent posture, with deep purple skin marked by swirling patterns that shifted under the artificial light. White hair cascaded down her back in intricate braids, a river of silver against her dark complexion. She stumbled, and one of the bags slipped from her grasp. Alan didn't think. He lunged forward, catching the bag before it struck the deck. It was heavier than expected, thrumming faintly against his palms as though it contained something alive. "Oh, such quick reflexes," the woman exclaimed, her voice rich and melodious. Her exotic accent rolled like music. She studied him with eyes that twinkled mischievously. In such strength, too. Alan forced a polite smile, returning the bag carefully. "Just trying to help, ma'am. These docks can be tricky with the gravity shifts." Her smile widened, flashing pearlescent teeth. So handsome, so strong, so polite. Perfect. She suddenly threw back her head and shouted something in a language Alan's translator chip couldn't catch. The noise echoed through the docking bay, and to his horror, the bustling chaos stilled. Hundreds of faces turned toward him. Silence stretched like a bowstring. Is everything. Okay, Alan asked, instinctively stepping back. Years of courier work had sharpened his sense of danger. This was about to go sideways. The woman's voice rang out again, this time in perfect standard. "This human has offered marriage to my granddaughter." Alan's jaw dropped. "Wait, what? No, I just—" His words drowned in the roar of the crowd. Aliens cheered. Someone started playing ceremonial music on a stringed instrument that sounded suspiciously like bagpipes being strangled. The mechanic clapped its tentacles in joy. The entire docking bay was erupting in celebration, and Alan was at the center of it. And then he saw her. Through the parting crowd came a figure that made his heart skip. She moved like a predator, stalking prey, graceful, controlled, lethal. Her skin was the same deep royal purple as the elders, but smoother, glowing faintly under the station's lights. Her hair streamed down in waves, the color of a desert sunset, threaded with crystalline ornaments that caught every glint of light. She wore an advanced combat suit that hugged her athletic frame, every curve balanced with the subtle menace of armor designed for war. But it was her eyes that truly stopped Alan's heart, liquid silver, with faint violet undertones burning with intensity. When they locked on him, he felt like a specimen under a microscope. "Grandmother," she said, her voice musical but edged like a blade. "This is the one." "Oh yes," Rama the elder crowed. "You should have seen him, so gallant. He caught my bag with perfect timing. Look at his bone structure. Our children will be beautiful." "What?" Alan sputtered, waving his hands. "There's been a huge misunderstanding. I was just helping with some bags." The younger alien Rama apparently circled him slowly. Her movements were sleek, cat-like, predatory. "Helping the family matriarch with her burdens," she said matter-of-factly. "One of our most sacred traditions. The ultimate gesture of worthiness as a potential mate." Alan swallowed. I didn't know that." "Then you admit your ignorance." Her eyes narrowed, glimmering with dangerous amusement. "At least you're honest. That is somewhat appealing." "Appealing," Alan exclaimed. He looked around desperately, but the crowd was watching with rapt fascination. There was no escape, only the expectation pressing down on him like a physical weight. The elder clapped her hands. "Oh, they are already flirting." "This is better than I dreamed." "We are not flirting," Alan and Rima said in unison, then blinked at each other in surprise. Before Alan could protest further, an explosion thundered from the direction of his ship. Smoke billowed from the Rusty Hope's engine port. Alan groaned. "Not again." He sprinted toward the ship, but Rima moved effortlessly beside him, matching his pace. "Your vessel is in distress," she observed. Really, what gave it away? The explosion or the smoke? Alan shot back sarcasm, spilling out even in panic. Rima's eyes gleamed. "Sarcasm is considered a sign of intelligence in our culture. You're making your case stronger." By the time they reached the Rusty Hope, sparks were raining down. The tentacled mechanic waved its limbs in frantic denial. "I didn't touch it. It just started going crazy." Alan dove to the access panel, fingers flying. "Core containment's failing. If I don't stabilize it." Move, Rima commanded. Before he could react, she shoved him aside, tore the panel open with her bare hands, and plunged her arm into the sizzling circuitry. Sparks spat against her skin, but she didn't even flinch. "You're insane," Alan shouted. "That core is—" Dropping, she interrupted calmly. Her arm moved with precise mechanical grace. "Your cooling system was sabotaged. Someone replaced the primary regulator with a counterfeit. Amateur work." Alan gaped. "You're an engineer." "I am many things." She withdrew her arm as the smoke dissipated. The ship quieted, stabilized. "Your vessel requires repairs, but it won't explode now." Alan exhaled, genuine relief flooding him. "Thanks. Seriously, that was incredible." "A warrior must understand all aspects of combat," she replied cryptically, "including mechanical." The elder grandmother Teuton apparently arrived then, flanked by armored guards. She beamed at the sight of Alan and Rima together. "Oh, look how well they work together. Clearly this is meant to be," Alan groaned. He wasn't sure which was worse, his sabotaged ship or the fact that he'd apparently just gotten engaged to a purple-skinned warrior princess because he'd picked up some bags. Alan Gass had survived more than his fair share of awkward encounters across the galaxy. Drunken debt collectors, amorous tentacled nobles, even a customs inspector who tried to confiscate his jacket because it was a hazard to morale. But nothing compared to standing in the center of Alpha 9's docking bay, surrounded by hundreds of aliens cheering for his sudden involuntary engagement. It felt like the universe had decided his humiliation wasn't entertaining enough without a live audience. "Wait, let's slow down here," Alan pleaded, raising his hands like a man trying to halt an oncoming avalanche. "This is all a misunderstanding. I was just being helpful. Courtesy, that's it, human tradition. Totally platonic." The crowd didn't hear him or didn't care. Aliens chanted words he couldn't understand, throwing flower petals made of bioluminescent silk that clung to his jacket like glitter. Someone started playing an instrument that looked like a cross between a harp and a chainsaw. A vendor even shoved a steaming skewer of roasted meat into his hand, declaring it a wedding feast appetizer. Grandmother Teuton, still clutching her bags with surprising vigor for someone who moments earlier had been tottering, smiled like a cat who had just discovered cream. "It is settled. My granddaughter will meet him here and now." And as if the universe wanted to twist the knife deeper, the crowd parted again. She approached like a storm-given flesh. Rima Teuton's presence filled the docking bay, silencing even the rowdiest merchants. Her combat suit gleamed in the overhead lights, sleek plates interwoven with faintly glowing filaments that suggested cutting-edge technology. Her steps were deliberate, every movement precise. She wasn't simply walking, she was claiming territory, and the territory happened to be everywhere her silver eyes landed. Those eyes fixed on Alan, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. She was the kind of beautiful that could start wars, skin shimmering like polished amethyst hair, cascading in sunset waves. Lips curved in a natural pout that promised either a kiss or a threat, maybe both. Her crystalline ornaments glittered like stars woven into her hair. It was beauty sharpened into a blade, and Alan felt like he'd just stumbled into its path. Grandmother Rima said, her voice carrying the timbre of music played on steel strings. "This is the one." "Oh yes," Grandmother Teuton replied with triumphant delight. "He caught my falling bag before it could touch the ground. Such reflexes, such gallantry. Look at those shoulders. He will give you strong children." The words echoed through Alan's skull like a plasma grenade. "Children." He choked on the roasted meat still in his hand and doubled over, coughing. "Hold on, this isn't what it looks like." "It looks," Rima said, circling him the way a predator might circle uncertain prey, "like you honored one of our most sacred traditions." "Sacred what?" Alan's sputtered eyes darting between her and the expectant crowd. "Helping the family matriarch with her burdens." Rima explained, her silver eyes never leaving his. "Among the Nari, it is the ultimate act of respect, a gesture of worthiness." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a tone that sent shivers down his spine. Only a potential mate would dare. Alan forced a weak laugh. "Funny story. Humans don't really do that. We just help, out of kindness, courtesy. Nothing romantic." Her eyes narrowed with predatory amusement. "So you claim ignorance of our customs?" "Yes," he exclaimed, desperate. total blissful ignorance. At least you are honest. She circled around to face him again, tilting her head slightly. Ignorance paired with honesty is appealing. Appealing on, groaned, rubbing his T-bowl. You've got to be kidding me. The elder clapped gleefully. Oh, they are already flirting. We are not flirting. Alan and Rima snapped in unison. Then their eyes met, and for one strange, breathless instant, Alan felt something shift. Not attraction, not yet, but awareness. The kind of awareness you got when the hairs on the back of your neck rose before a storm hit. Grandmother Tutun basked in her triumph. The crowd broke into celebratory chants, some waving banners that had appeared suspiciously fast, as if they'd been waiting for this exact scenario. Rima, however, studied Alan with clinical intensity. She stepped closer, close enough that he caught the faint scent of spice and ozone clinging to her skin. Her silver eyes glittered like mercury under starlight. Tell me, she murmured, her voice pitched so only he could hear. Are you saying you wish to dishonor my grandmother's blessing? Alan froze. Dishonor. That sounded like the kind of word that ended with him floating out an airlock. No, I'm saying I'm probably violating 1,000 cultural rules right now without knowing it. Rima's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, not quite a threat. At least you are smart enough to realize your own ignorance. Alan had never wanted a hyperdrive malfunction more in his life. Unfortunately, the rusty hope was too busy belching smoke to provide him an escape. He tried again weakly. Listen, I'm just a courier. My ship is falling apart. I have debts, clients' deadlines. I'm not exactly prime husband material. On the contrary, Rima replied smoothly, your flaws may prove entertaining. The elder interrupted, clapping her hands to draw attention back to herself. Come, come. We must honor this moment properly. The suitor must dine with us. We shall prepare the family hall at once. I'm not a suitor, Alan protested. The grandmother ignored him entirely, already barking orders in her native tongue. Alien servants scurried to obey. The crowd cheered louder. Somewhere a band struck up a triumphant wedding march. Rima's hand closed around Alan's wrist with shocking strength, pulling him closer until their faces were inches apart. Her grip was firm, but not cruel, her touch radiating controlled power. Whether you are suitor or prisoner, she said softly, is for our traditions to decide. You will come. He met her silver gaze, trying to muster bravado. Do I have a choice? Her smile this time was unmistakably dangerous. Not one you will survive. By the time the crowd began dispersing, Alan found himself swept along in Rima's wake, her grip never loosening on his arm. The elder walked proudly ahead, tossing occasional grins at strangers who congratulated her. Every alien they passed bowed to Rima, treating her like a queen in waiting. Alan, meanwhile, felt like a condemned man being paraded to his execution. He tried whispering to his captor. So, let me get this straight. Because I picked up some bags, I'm now your fiancé. Rima's expression didn't change, but her eyes gleamed with humor. She didn't voice. That is the essence of it. That's insane. No, she corrected smoothly, that is tradition. Alan groaned, same thing. When they reached the private corridors of the Tutun family, the contrast was staggering. Gone was the chaotic market of Alpha 9. Here walls shimmered with flowing patterns that echoed the markings on Rima's skin, pulsing faintly as though alive. Soft ambient light glowed without visible fixtures. The air carried a subtle fragrance that was both floral and metallic, strange yet intoxicating. This is fancy, Alan muttered, still trying to take everything in. Guess your family does well for themselves. The Tutun clan holds many trading routes, Rima replied coolly. She hadn't released his arm, though her grip had eased slightly. Grandmother enjoys her comforts. I'll say, Alan murmured. He passed aliens clad in ceremonial armor, their helmets crested with glowing sigils. They bowed respectfully to Rima, ignoring him entirely. The weight of her importance pressed in on him like gravity. So you're all warriors, he asked cautiously. We are Nari, she said simply, as though that explained everything. Strength is our heritage. Tradition is our law. And yet, her eyes flicked toward him, glinting with amusement. You are unlike any suitor before. Alan gave a nervous laugh. That's one way to put it. The family dining hall of the Tutun clan was not a place Alan Gass had ever imagined himself standing. If he'd been asked that morning what his evening plans were, sitting at a crystalline banquet table with alien royalty who think I'm engaged to a warrior princess would not have made the list. At best, he'd have said finding a mechanic who'll fix my ship for free or drinking myself unconscious to forget that nobody would. But here he was. The massive doors had opened to reveal a chamber that belonged in a space opera holovid. A long table stretched across polished floors of living crystal, glowing faintly from within, as though lit by the stars themselves. The walls were lined with weapons that Alan initially mistook for decorations until he noticed the subtle scorch marks, the worn grips, the patina of blood-polished steel. Every piece had been used probably to kill someone. Above the ceiling disappeared into darkness, giving the impression of infinite height. Alan's jaw had nearly hit the floor. This is not a casual dinner, is it? Nothing in our clan is casual, Rama replied, leading him to a chair that molded itself to his frame the moment he sat down. Especially not matters of tradition. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. So, tradition says that because I helped your grandmother with some heavy bags, I'm now your fiancé. That is the polite translation, Rama said evenly. Her silver eyes glittered. A suitor chosen by destiny. Destiny, lady. I tripped into this because I've got reflexes and a bad habit of being polite. She tilted her head, studying him. Reflexes and courtesy are highly prized among the Nari. It seems the fates agree. Yeah, well, the fates clearly need glasses, Alan muttered. Grandmother Tutun entered, sweeping into the hall like a queen, followed by attendants carrying trays of food that steamed and glowed in impossible colors. She took her seat at the head of the table, her white braids glimmering with woven gems. Ah, you two are already getting comfortable, she said with delight. We're not, Alan began, but Rima's hand landed firmly on his wrist, silencing him. Her grip wasn't cruel, but it carried a silent warning, shut up before you get dismembered. Grandmother gestured to the attendants, and dishes began arriving in a parade of sensory assault. Plates of meat that shimmered like oil, on water bowls of soup that emitted faint musical tones, breads that shifted color when torn open. Alan stared overwhelmed. Eat, grandmother urged. Strength is needed for what comes next. Alan picked up a fork, thankfully universal in design, and cautiously poked at a glowing fruit. It released a puff of sparkling vapor. He coughed. What exactly comes next? Discussion of the marriage, of course, the elder replied cheerfully. The ceremony must be swift. The omens are favorable, the clan council eager. By the next moonrise, you will be joined. Alan nearly choked on the fruit. Moonrise. That's what 12 hours. Rima set down her cup with a quiet clink, her expression unreadable. Grandmother, perhaps we should consider alternatives. Alternatives, Alan asked, seizing the lifeline. Yes, I like alternatives. Let's explore those. In detail, preferably far away from weddings. Grandmother pursed her lips. You dare suggest delay? Rima met her gaze evenly. He is untested. The traditions allow for the trial path. Murmurs rippled among the gathered clan officials. Alan glanced around nervously at the alien faces watching him. Many of them armored, most of them heavily armed. What? What's the trial path? Rima turned her silver eyes on him, calm and direct. A series of 3 challenges. Tests of strength, cunning, and fidelity. If you succeed, the marriage proceeds with full honor. If you fail, the engagement is dissolved without shame. And if I refuse both the wedding and the trials, Alan asked, suspicion twisting in his gut. Rima's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. Then the insult would be grave. You would be declared dishonorable, exiled from Nari space, perhaps hunted. Hunted, Alan yelped. By who? By me, she said simply. His mouth went dry. He glanced at grandmother, hoping for leniency, but the elder was smiling, as though this were all tremendously entertaining. Ah, young love, she sighed, so full of drama. This isn't love, Alan protested. Not yet, grandmother corrected. But it will be. The attendants began serving the ceremonial drinks, a glittering liquid that pulsed like liquid lightning in translucent cups. Rima took hers gracefully. Alan sniffed his suspiciously. This isn't poisonous, right? Only to the unworthy, Rima replied smoothly. He stared. That's a joke, right? Perhaps. She sipped her drink, eyes gleaming. Alan groaned and took a tentative gulp. To his surprise, the liquid burned like fire, then cooled into something that tasted faintly of citrus and starlight. He blinked. Okay, not bad. Still terrifying, but not bad. As the meal progressed, the conversation turned inevitably back to Alan's role. Clan officials questioned him about his lineage, his skills, his accomplishments. I'm a courier, Alan said, trying to make it sound grander than it was. Fastest deliveries in the sector when my ship isn't falling apart. Courier One warrior scoffed. So you run from trouble instead of meeting it, Alan bristled. Hey, dodging bounty hunters and smugglers isn't running. It's surviving. There's a difference. Rayma's silver gaze lingered on him, unreadable. Finally, she said, survival is a skill. Not all warriors understand that. The officials murmured among themselves. Some nodded. Others looked skeptical. At last, grandmother raised her cup high. It is decided. The suitor has two paths, marriage or the trials. By dawn, he must choose. Dawn, Allen exclaimed. You people really don't like giving humans time to think, do you? Rayma leaned close, her voice a whisper against his ear. Think quickly. Your life depends on it. When the hall finally emptied, Alan remained seated, head in his hands. The crystalline table glowed faintly beneath his elbows. Across from him, Rayma watched silently, sipping the last of her drink. You're enjoying this, he accused. Her lips curved slightly. Perhaps. Why me? Alan asked. I mean seriously, out of all the people in this station, why me? Rayma set down her cup, eyes gleaming with something he couldn't read. Because destiny often chooses the unlikeliest messengers. And because you caught my grandmother's bag. Alan groaned. That bag is going to haunt me forever, isn't it? Yes, she said simply. Then she rose gracefully, her armor catching the light. Rest well, human. Tomorrow the trials begin. As she left, her hair caught the glow of the crystalline walls streaming like fire behind her. Alan watched her go, torn between dread and an inexplicable thrill. For better or worse, his fate was no longer his own. The roar of the crowd hit Alan like a physical force the moment he stepped into the arena. It wasn't just noise, it was a wall of sound, a tidal wave of alien voices, chanting, stomping, clapping, all eager for blood. Incense smoke drifted through the air, mingling with the ozone tang of energy weapons and the faint copper scent of anticipation. The arena itself was ancient, a circular pit carved from stone, older than the station itself, ringed by tiered seats packed with eager spectators. Alan adjusted the collar of his borrowed combat suit and muttered under his breath, I should have just said yes to the marriage. A wedding's a lot less dangerous than this. Rayma's voice, calm and cool, floated to him from the sidelines where she stood with her arms folded. Marriage would have been dangerous too. My people take the honeymoon very seriously. Alan groaned. That's not reassuring. The announcer's booming voice silenced the crowd. Behold the first trial of the human suitor. Combat with Cathor the undefeated. From the opposite gate emerged Cathor, and Alan's heart sank. The alien was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with a torso as broad as a cargo shuttle, and 8 muscled arms that each held a weapon. Blades, maces, energy whips all gleamed under the arena lights. His scaled skin shimmered in hues of green and bronze, and a ceremonial mask concealed his face. Each step made the ground tremble. Alan blurted the only reasonable response, You've got to be kidding me. The crowd chanted Cathor's name, stomping in rhythm. The sound made Alan's bones rattle. Beside the gate, Rayma called out, her silver eyes glinting with amusement. Remember your training. What training? Alan shot back. You threw me around on a mat for 6 hours yesterday? That's not training, that's assault. She smiled faintly. Then survive, courier. Show us what you can do. The gong sounded. Cathor charged. All 8 arms, blurred weapons spinning in a deadly dance. Alan dove and rolled, barely avoiding a mace that cratered the stone where he'd been standing. He scrambled to his feet, heart hammering. Okay, he gasped. Rule number 1, don't get hit. Cathor swung again. Alan ducked under a blade, sidestepped a whip, and yelped as a spear whistled past his ear. The crowd roared approval. Cathor paused, towering over him. A deep, rumbling voice emerged from behind the mask. You are quick, little human, but quickness will not save you. Want to bet? Alan shot back, though his voice cracked. He darted left, forcing Cathor to lumber after him. Each of the alien strikes gouged the arena floor, sending shards flying. Alan's mind raced. He couldn't overpower this monster. He had to outthink him. Use your head gas. Use the environment. Find an angle. As he circled, his eyes caught something odd, a serving bot moving along the edge of the arena, balancing trays of drinks for wealthy spectators. Among them, tall frothing glasses of Centurion LA, a beverage infamous across the sector for one very particular property. It was slippery, extremely slippery. An idea sparked. A stupid, reckless, desperate idea. Perfect. Hey, Cathor! Alan shouted, backing toward the edge of the arena. I heard your snapdragons aren't even purple. They're pink. The crowd gasped. Even Rema's eyebrows rose. Insulting a warrior's prize flowers, that was bold. Cathor roared in fury and charged, weapons raised high. Alan waited until the last possible second, then dove aside. The massive alien barreled forward, unable to stop in time. He crashed into the serving bot, sending drinks flying everywhere. Centurion LA splattered across the arena floor, spreading in a shimmering puddle. Cathor's many feet hit the slick liquid and immediately skidded. The mighty warrior flailed arms, windmilling weapons, clattering away as the crowd gasped. He performed what looked like an impromptu dance routine before crashing down with a thunderous wham that shook the arena. Silence. Then laughter. The crowd erupted in cheers, stomping and hollering. Alan staggered to his feet, panting, and approached. He offered a hand, careful of the floor, bit slippery. Cathor stared at him, then let out a rumbling chuckle. He grasped Alan's hand and hauled himself up with surprising gentleness. His mask retracted, revealing a broad, scarred face with warm, amused eyes. Good strategy, human. Few think to use their environment. Alan blinked. Wait, you're not mad. Cathor grinned. Outside the arena, I run a flower shop. Purple snapdragons are my specialty. Alan barked a disbelieving laugh. You're joking. Not at all, Cathor said, clearly enjoying the moment. And now you have earned my respect. Fight with brains, not just brawn, that is rare. The announcer declared Alan the victor. The crowd roared approval, chanting his name this time. Alan, Alan. Alan raised his arms weakly, more surprised than triumphant. He turned toward Rema, who was watching with arms crossed. Her expression was cool, but her eyes sparkled faintly. Passed your test, he called to her, grinning despite his exhaustion. Still think I'm just a courier. She approached as the arena quieted her movement, smooth and commanding. You passed, she acknowledged, then lowering her voice so only he could hear. Though I'm not sure spilling drinks counts as honorable combat. Hey, you're the one who told me to use whatever advantages I could find. I meant weapons training, she replied dryly. Not beverage warfare, but the faint curve of her lips betrayed amusement she wouldn't admit aloud. Alan's grin widened. Admit it, you're impressed. Rema leaned closer, silver eyes locking with his. Don't push your luck, human. This was only the first trial. The others will not be so forgiving. He swallowed hard. Figures. Back in the preparation chamber, Alan collapsed onto a bench, wiping sweat from his brow. Rema followed him in her combat suit, gleaming under the soft light. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. You surprised me. Alan raised an eyebrow. Surprised you didn't expect me to win, or surprised I didn't die horribly. Both, she admitted. Most who face Cathor fail. You succeeded not through strength, but cunning. That is, unusual and dangerous. Dangerous how? Because cunning can be harder to predict than brute force. She turned away, her hair catching the light like a banner. I will need to watch you closely. Alan smirked tiredly. Careful, princess. Watch me too closely and you might start liking me. Her head tilted slightly, though she didn't turn. Or hating you more. We shall see. Later, as the clan officials filed their reports and the arena emptied, Alan couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The crowd had cheered his name. Cathor had respected him. And Rema, though still infuriatingly unreadable, had looked at him with something other than disdain. For the first time since this mess began, Alan wondered if maybe, just maybe, he had a chance. Of course, then he remembered there were 2 more trials to go, and his stomach sank like a stone. Great, he muttered, slumping back. 1 down, 2 to go, no pressure. Somewhere deep in the station, ceremonial drums began to beat, announcing to all of Alpha 9 that the human suitor had survived the first trial. The sound echoed through the halls, both celebratory and foreboding. Rama stood at the doorway watching him silently. Her silver eyes reflected the faint glow of the torches lining the hall. You did well, she said finally, but the next test will be different. You will need more than quick reflexes and slippery ale. Alan groaned. Why do I get the feeling I'm going to regret surviving this one? Her lips curved in that dangerous almost smile. Because you will. If Alan thought surviving Cathor in the combat pit had earned him a reprieve, he was sorely mistaken. The very next day, while still nursing bruises and a headache that throbbed like a faulty hyperdrive, he found himself standing beside Rima in a briefing chamber lit by holographic displays. Grandmother Tutun presided at the center, looking smugger than ever. Around her clan, officials murmured like a council of war. Suspended in the middle of the room was a hologram of a glittering space station that looked less like a hub of commerce and more like a neon-lit spider's web spun across the void. Alan frowned at it. What am I looking at? New Vegas Station, Rima answered. Her voice carried no emotion, but her silver eyes gleamed faintly. The gambling capital of this sector. Alan groaned. Of course it is. Let me guess my next trial involves losing all my non-existent money. Grandmother leaned forward, her braids glittering. Not losing, dear boy. Winning. Our informants tell us the thieves who stole the heart of Nexus are attempting to sell it tonight at the Omega Table, the most exclusive poker game in the galaxy. The heart of Nexus. Just hearing the words sent a shiver down Alan's spine. He'd seen the artifact once, already glowing with strange energy in the Tutun vault. It had pulsed like it was alive, and somehow, impossibly, it had resonated with him. Now it was gone stolen during the chaos of his engagement. And you want me, Alan said slowly, to walk into a den of criminals and high rollers, sit down at a poker table and win it back. Rima's lips curved faintly. Exactly. Alan stared. I'm a courier, not a gambler. You were a courier, Grandmother corrected sweetly. Now you are our suitor, and this is your second trial. Alan rubbed his temples. I hate tradition. Arrival at New Vegas. Hours later, Alan's refurbished Rusty Hope slid into a private berth on New Vegas Station. Courtesy of Nari engineers, the ship now gleamed, where before it groaned, its hull reinforced engines humming like a predator ready to pounce. It was the first time in years Alan had felt his vessel wasn't one accident away from exploding. But he hardly had time to appreciate it. New Vegas blazed against the darkness of space like a jewel made of neon. Holographic dancers spun across the exterior, shimmering advertisements promised fortunes in every tongue, and streams of ships lined up like pilgrims approaching a holy site. Alan tugged at the collar of his tailored jacket, which had been provided by Rima's attendants. He hated how good it looked on him. It screamed rich scoundrel, which was exactly the point. Beside him, Rima emerged in a gown of shimmering fabric that clung to her form and shifted colors like sunset on water. The crystalline ornaments in her hair glittered with every step. Alan almost forgot how to breathe. You clean up nice. She didn't even glance at him. We are undercover as a couple seeking to make a fortune. Try not to ruin the illusion. Trust me, Alan said with a grin. I'm great at pretending. Her eyes flicked toward him, silver and sharp. I noticed. An old flame. They walked arm in arm through the casino levels, past holographic waterfalls, and tables where fortunes exchanged hands in seconds. Alien dealers with too many limbs, or none at all, presided over games Alan had never even heard of. Everywhere lights flashed, music pounded, and greed hung heavy in the air. At last they reached a door marked only with a golden symbol. Alan pressed his palm against the scanner. The door slid open, revealing a private club that oozed luxury. Behind the bar stood a woman with green skin and curling antennae. She froze when she saw him. The glass in her hands slipped and shattered. Alan gasped, she breathed. Alan winced. Hello, Jazzy. Her antennae quivered with anger. You've got some nerve showing up here after what you pulled. Rima's silver eyes narrowed. Who is she? Alan forced a smile. An acquaintance. Jazzy and I go way back. Back to when you sold this place to the syndicate and vanished. Jazzy snapped. Rima's gaze sharpened. You owned a casino. Alan rubbed the back of his neck. Briefly. Long story. Involved 3 Martian princesses, a stolen quantum drive, and a very angry space whale. Jazzy folded her arms. And it ended with me stuck cleaning up your mess. Which you clearly survived, Alan said brightly. You look great, by the way. Rima's hand twitched on his arm, her expression frosty. Focus. Jazzy's antennae angled toward Rima. And who's this? My fiancé, Alan said without thinking. The words slipped out before he could stop it. Rima blinked. Jazzy blinked. Alan wanted to crawl into the nearest maintenance hatch and die. Rima stepped forward smoothly, her tone polite but firm. A pleasure. I understand you can help us with an investment opportunity. Jazzy studied them both, then sighed. You're insane. You want into the Omega table. That obvious, huh? Alan asked. Obvious and suicidal, Jazzy replied. The buy-in alone could bankrupt a planet, and the players, killers, warlords, syndicate bosses. You lose, you don't walk away. Money isn't an issue, Rima said, producing a crystal card. Its glow made Jazzy's antennae stiffen. Well. Jazzy leaned back. You've moved up in the world, Alan. Fine, I can get you in. But watch yourselves. Rumor is something big's going down tonight. Bigger than credits. Alan forced a grin. Bigger than credits usually means trouble. Exactly, Jazzy said darkly. The Omega table. 20 minutes later, Alan and Rima stood before an elevator guarded by two hulking brutes. They presented Jazzy's credentials and were escorted up. Rima's hand found Alan's as the elevator rose, her grip tight. Nervous, he asked, smirking. Never, she said, but she didn't let go. The doors opened into a chamber that redefined luxury. Force fields formed transparent walls, offering a panoramic view of the stars. At the center floated the Omega table, a circular platform surrounded by chairs that seemed to hover in midair. Around it sat the most dangerous collection of beings Alan had ever seen. Crime lords in jeweled robes, mercenary captains bristling with scars, even a cyborg with chrome-plated skin that gleamed under the lights. The dealer turned, and Alan's blood went cold. Welcome, the cyborg said in a smooth, metallic voice. I am Zinc. Tonight we play no-limit quantum hold'em. Rima leaned in. You know him? Yeah, Alan muttered. He's the one who helped me lose this casino. Zinc's mechanical face didn't change, but Alan swore the cyborg was smiling. Mr. Gas. What an unexpected pleasure. And with such lovely company. His photoreceptors scanned Rima. Please take your seats. By the game. The cards were dealt. Alan's hands trembled slightly as he picked them up, though he masked it with a cocky grin. Rima sat beside him, outwardly calm, her silver eyes flicking between players with calculated focus. The first few rounds were a blur. Alan folded more than he played, trying to get a feel for the table. Every opponent was dangerous, not just in cards, but in the weight of power they carried. Bets escalated into sums that made Alan's head spin. Then he saw it. Behind one of the players, a hulking armored figure sat a familiar set of bags, ornate, humming faintly with energy. The stolen Nari bags. Inside them, the heart of Nexus. His pulse quickened. Rima, he whispered, pretending to study his cards. Targets here. The bags. Her eyes flicked briefly, then returned to her hand. Then win. Easier said than done. The armored thief shoved a mountain of chips forward. All in. Alan glanced at his hand. Garbage. Total garbage. He hesitated. Then he noticed the faint shimmer of stealth tech flickering around the thief's armor, the same kind used during the original theft. That was enough. All in, Alan said, pushing his stack forward. Gasps rippled around the table. Rima's eyes widened fractionally, but she said nothing. The dealer's voice was smooth. Show your hands. The armored thief revealed a royal flush. The crowd murmured. Alan flipped his hand. Nothing. Worthless. Interesting, Zinc mused. A bold play, Mr. Gas. Almost as interesting as a security alert I've just received about 2 Nari agents searching for stolen property. The room exploded into chaos. Guards surged from hidden doors. The armored thief grabbed the bags and bolted. Rima moved like lightning, flipping the entire floating poker table with impossible strength. Chips and cards scattered as she drew concealed blades from her gown, cutting down the nearest guards. Go, she shouted. The artifact is priority. Alan sprinted after the thief, heart pounding, leaving the sounds of Rima's battle echoing behind him. The chase. The corridors of New Vegas became a blur of neon and chaos. Alan tore through maintenance tunnels, cut across balconies, always one step behind the armored thief. The stolen bags clanked against the alien's side as he ran. Going somewhere, Alan called, breath ragged. The thief didn't answer, sprinting faster. Alan's instincts, honed from years of running from angry clients and repo men, guided him. He cut through a service hatch emerging ahead of the thief in a cargo bay. Surprise! The armored alien skidded to a halt, weapons deploying from his suit. Alan raised his hands. Look, I don't suppose we can settle this with a nice game of dice, can we? The alien's helmet retracted, revealing a scaled face Alan recognized from wanted posters. You don't understand, human. The heart of Nexus isn't just a relic. It's power enough to shift the balance of this sector. Alan's retort died on his lips as a panel above burst open. Rayma dropped from the ceiling, landing in a combat stance, her gown torn, revealing her battlesuit beneath. Her silver eyes burned. Return the artifact, she growled. Or bleed. The thief laughed, dramatic as always. But I have what I came for, and soon my employer's ship will arrive. Not if I have anything to say about it, Alan said, pulling a small device from his pocket, a randomizer chip he had palmed from the poker table. The thief sneered. A trinket? Alan activated it. Energy rippled. The thief's armor froze, systems crashing. The heart of Nexus slipped from his grip, clattering to the floor. Alan dove, catching it. The artifact pulsed in his hands, light flaring, as though it recognized him. Warmth spread up his arms, filling his chest, thrumming in time with his heartbeat. The thief snarled, "It's chosen you." Rayma stepped forward, blade at his throat. "And by our traditions, that means you've already lost." The heart of Nexus pulsed in Alan's hands like a living thing. Its crystalline core glowed brighter with each beat, resonating with his own frantic pulse. For a terrifying second, he thought it might explode. Instead, the light wrapped around him in a shimmering aura, threads of silver and violet weaving into his skin. Rayma's silver eyes widened. For once, her carefully cultivated composure cracked. "It resonates with you." Alan blinked down at the artifact. What I thought this thing was just a family heirloom." The thief snarled, struggling against her blade. "It is more than that. The heart is ancient technology, older than your species human. It chooses its wielder, and it chose you." "That's insane," Alan muttered, though the artifact hummed louder, as if disagreeing. He felt its warmth flooding his chest, amplifying his thoughts, heightening his senses. He could hear the thrum of the station's power grid, sense the faint electromagnetic fields of the thief's faltering armor. For the first time in his life, Alan felt more. Rayma recovered quickly, pressing her blade harder against the thief's scaled throat. "Your employer will not have it, nor will you." Sirens wailed through the casino levels. A station-wide alarm blared, and then came the voice over the intercom warning hostile fleet emerging from hyperspace. Unauthorized vessels detected. Rayma's head snapped up. "Shadow Clan." The thief smirked despite the blade at his throat. Right on time. The invasion. The floor shook as the first volley struck New Vegas station. Lights flickered. Patrons screamed. Gamblers scattered, clutching chips as though credits mattered more than survival. Through the panoramic windows, Alan glimpsed sleek black warships dropping from hyperspace, their hulls etched with menacing crimson sigils. Shadow Clan vessels. Grandmother Tutun's words from the briefing came back to him. "They have always coveted the heart." Rayma yanked the thief to his knees, binding his wrists with energy restraints. "We move now." In case you haven't noticed," Alan said, holding up the glowing artifact, "this thing is broadcasting like a distress beacon. How do we hide it from an entire fleet?" "You don't hide the heart of Nexus," Rayma replied grimly. "You defend it with your life." Great, Alan muttered. No pressure. They sprinted through the chaos, weaving past panicked civilians and battling security drones. Rayma fought like liquid steel, each movement precise, blades flashing. Alan, for his part, used the environment, slamming security shutters down behind them, rerouting blast doors, even hurling a gambler's discarded briefcase into the path of pursuing mercenaries. At last, they reached a private hangar where Nari warriors were mustering. Grandmother Tutun was already there, surrounded by guards, her braids slightly disheveled, but her smile as sharp as ever. "The artifact," she cried when she saw Alan. "You recovered it." "Yeah, but now a whole fleet wants it back," Alan said, shoving the glowing crystal into a containment case. Even closed, the case thrummed with energy. "What's Plan B?" The grandmother's eyes twinkled. "Plan B is simple. We let the suitor prove himself." Alan groaned. "Of course we do." Boarding action. The Shadow Clan wasted no time. Boarding craft latched onto the station's hull like leeches, cutting through with plasma torches. Warriors poured into the hangar, dark, armored eyes blazing and weapons crackling with energy. Rima shoved Alan behind her. Stay close. He clutched the artifact here, pounding. Around them, Nari warriors clashed with their shadow counterparts in a whirlwind of blades and plasma. Sparks flew, screams echoed. The air thickened with smoke and blood. Alan ducked as a plasma bolt seared overhead. He rolled behind a crate, barely keeping hold of the heart. His courier instincts screamed at him to run to find a maintenance tunnel and vanish. But something held him in place. The weight of Rima's silver gaze, maybe, or the steady pulse of the artifact filling him with borrowed courage. Rima fought like a storm unleashed. She moved through enemies with terrifying grace, her blades carving arcs of silver light. Yet even she began to falter under the relentless assault. Alan, she shouted, cutting down an armored foe. Use it. What? He held up the artifact. I don't even know what it does. Then learn the awakening. As another wave of shadow warriors surged, Alan gritted his teeth. All right, Nexus, heart, or crystal, or whatever you are. Show me something. The artifact blazed, flooding him with light. His vision filled with streams of data power, flows energy, signatures, weak points in enemy armor. Instinctively, he thrust the heart forward. A shockwave erupted. Every shadow warrior in a 10-meter radius staggered as their weapons fizzled, their armor shorting out. The air crackled, the ground trembling beneath the release. Alan gasped. Holy, did I just do that? Rima's lips curved in the faintest, fiercest smile. You did. Her silver eyes locked onto his, and for a heartbeat, the battle around them blurred. There was only the pulse of the heart between them, binding them together. Then a shadow commander lunged, breaking the moment. Rima spun and cut him down. Don't get cocky, human. This is far from over. Retreat. The Nari managed to push back the boarding force long enough to reach their ship. Alan stumbled aboard, still clutching the heart, his veins thrumming with residual energy. Rima sealed the hatch and turned to him. For once, the steel in her voice softened. You handled yourself well, better than I expected. Alan grinned weakly. So, impressed yet? She stepped closer, her silver eyes gleaming. Perhaps. The artifact pulsed between them, its glow reflecting in her gaze. The air felt charged heavy with something unspoken. Alan's heart hammered. Without thinking, he leaned closer. Rima didn't stop him. Their lips met in a clash as fierce as battle. For a moment, everything else vanished, the alarms, the war outside, even the artifact's hum. There was only fire, electricity, and the undeniable truth that somewhere between combat and chaos, something deeper had taken root. When they finally broke apart, breathless Rima's cheeks held the faintest flush of darker purple. That was reckless. Alan smirked. You like reckless. She hesitated, then let the faintest smile escape. Perhaps. The Shadow Clan's gambit. Before either could say more, the ship jolted violently. Through the viewport, the Shadow Clan fleet maneuvered dark ships encircling the station like predators scenting blood. The lead vessel, a colossal dreadnought, loomed ahead, its cannons glowing. Rima's expression hardened. They will not stop until they have the heart. Then it's a good thing they'll have to go through us first, Alan said, though his stomach twisted. He had no idea how long he could wield the artifact's power without burning out. But when Rima's hand closed over his, steady and warm, the heart pulsed brighter, as if responding to their connection. Together, she said. Together, Alan echoed. And as the ship plunged toward the enemy blockade, Alan Gass realized two terrifying truths. He was in way over his head. He had never wanted to be anywhere else. The heart of Nexus had barely stopped glowing before Alan found himself marched into yet another chamber of tradition. It was smaller than the arena, more intimate, with balconies for only the most important Nari. Along the walls, ceremonial weapons gleamed ominously, their blades polished as though eager to taste blood. Grandmother Tutun presided at the center, beaming with pride. The second trial is complete. The suitor has retrieved the artifact and proven his resourcefulness. Now comes the third trial, the trial of fidelity. Alan's stomach sank. That sounds ominous. Rima stood at his side, her body tense. She hadn't let go of his arm since they left the battlefield. Now, however, her silver eyes were sharper than usual, narrowed, watchful, almost possessive. The rules are simple, Grandmother announced. Resist the temptations of our most skilled seductress for 1 standard hour. Should he fail? She gestured casually to the rack of weapons. The consequences will be corrective. Before Alan could respond, a door slid open and a figure stepped forward. She was striking skin the color of sapphire clad in little more than shimmering fabric that clung like mist. Her movements were fluid, hypnotic, each step a dance designed to ensnare. She smiled at Alan with lips like velvet and purred, "I am Saya. Shall we begin?" Alan's jaw dropped. "Wait, this is the trial. You want me to, what? Say no to Space Matahari here?" The seductress swayed closer, every line of her body radiating practiced allure. The watching officials leaned forward, eager to see the human fail. But before Sia could so much as touch him, there was a blur of movement. Crack! Rima's fist connected with the seductress's jaw in a precise strike. Sia crumpled to the floor unconscious. The entire chamber went dead silent. "Trial concluded," Rima said flatly. Grandmother blinked, taken aback. "That is not how this works." "No one," Rima said, her voice cold as steel, "touches my—" She hesitated, catching herself. "My trial candidate." Alan blinked, then stammered, "Technically, she didn't touch me. So, I guess that's a pass." The balconies erupted into laughter and shocked murmurs. Grandmother clapped her hands, delighted. "Oh, the drama. How wonderfully romantic." Rima shot her a withering glare, then grabbed Alan by the wrist and dragged him out of the chamber before anyone could object. Corridor confrontation. They ended up in a narrow maintenance corridor barely wide enough for two people. The dim lights flickered, casting shadows that danced across Rima's face. That Alan said, still dazed, was one hell of a punch. Rima pressed him against the wall with sudden force, her silver eyes blazing. "Do not mistake my actions. I was preserving the integrity of the trial." By knocking out the trial, Alan raised an eyebrow. Sounded a lot like jealousy to me. Her hands shot up, pinning him harder. "Say that word again and I will throw you out the nearest airlock." "Wouldn't dream of it," Alan said quickly, though a grin tugged at his lips. "Still, kinda hot when you're protective." Her face was inches from his, her breath brushing his skin. For a heartbeat, he thought she might kiss him or kill him. The tension between them crackled like plasma. Then the alarms blared. The Shadow Clan arrived. Red emergency lights flooded the corridor. The station AI's voice echoed multiple unauthorized vessels approaching. Hostile intent detected. Rima released him instantly, snapping into warrior mode. "The Shadow Clan, they're here." Grandmother's voice crackled over the comms. "They know we recovered the heart. They come in force. Get to the command center." They sprinted through chaos-filled corridors. Civilians ran screaming. Nari warriors rushed to battle stations. The heart of Nexus pulsed inside its containment case, resonating with Alan's racing heartbeat. In the command center, holographic displays revealed a fleet of Shadow Clan warships dropping from hyperspace. Their designs were darker, more aggressive than Nari vessels bristling with cannons. At their core loomed a dreadnought so massive it blotted out the stars. "They've always coveted the heart," Grandmother spat. "Now they believe we are too weak to protect it." "They're not wrong," Alan muttered. Rima's hand tightened on his arm. "We must get the artifact to safety." "They'll be watching for that," Alan said. "If we try to smuggle it to your temple ship, they'll track us instantly." "Then we need a diversion," Rima said grimly. She turned to him, silver eyes burning. "How fast is your ship now?" Alan grinned, adrenaline sparking, fast enough to make them regret chasing it. Into the fire. The rusty Hope roared to life, its Nari upgrades humming with power. For the first time, Alan felt like the old freighter wasn't trying to kill him. Rima strapped into the weapons console beside him, her fingers flying with practiced precision. "Ready?" Alan asked, hands tightening on the controls. "Always." They blasted from the docking bay straight into the teeth of the Shadow Clan blockade. Enemy vessels swiveled to intercept cannons blazing. Plasma fire streaked across the void. "3 pursuit craft," Rima reported, voice steady. "Only 3, I'm insulted." Alan threw the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers that would have torn the rusty Hope apart before its upgrades. They spun through weapons fire, weaving between enemy ships. Rima's return fire lanced out, striking one pursuer's engines and sending it spiraling. "Nice flying," she admitted. "Nice shooting," Alan replied. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, something electric sparking between them, even in the chaos of battle. More enemy ships closed in, tightening the noose. "They're powering their tractor beam," Rima warned. The massive Shadow Dreadnought's beam locked onto the rusty Hope, yanking them in like prey caught in a web. If we try to jump now, we'll tear the ship apart, Alan muttered, scanning readouts. Any ideas, Rama asked, though her tone suggested she already knew what his answer would be. Alan glanced at the artifact, then at her. 1. You're gonna hate it. The courier's trip. He popped the containment case open. The heart of Nexus floated upward, pulsing with fierce light. Energy surged into him, flooding his veins, syncing with his nerves. His eyes glowed faintly as he grasped the controls. Trust me, he said softly. For a terrifying second, Rima hesitated. Then she nodded. If you get us killed, I'll be very annoyed. Noted. Instead of fighting the tractor beam, Alan did the opposite. He pushed the engines into it. The Rusty Hope accelerated toward the Dreadnought's hangar at breakneck speed. You're insane, Rima hissed. Comes with the jacket, Alan said, grinning madly. At the last second, he cut power to the engines and slammed the emergency brake thrusters. The ship flipped end over end, bleeding momentum in a maneuver no sane pilot would attempt. The heart's energy wrapped around the vessel, holding it together when physics should have ripped it apart. They skidded into the hangar, crashing through rows of parked fighters. Sparks flew. Alarm screamed. Rama unstrapped her battlesuit, materializing around her. Unfortunately, you survived. Hey, I told you I'm good at deliveries. Alan grabbed the artifact. And I just delivered us straight into the wolf's mouth. The showdown. Shadow warriors poured into the hangar, weapons raised. Alan stepped out of the Rusty Hope, the heart blazing in his hands. Its light filled the cavernous space, casting long shadows. Question, Alan called, his voice echoing. What happens when ancient tech meets modern weapons? He thrust the heart forward. Energy surged, crashing through the hangar like a tidal wave. Every piece of technology shut down. Fighters went dark. Weapons fizzled. Even the artificial gravity flickered, sending warriors stumbling. That, Rama said, stepping beside him with blades drawn, was either brilliant or the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Why not both? Alan grinned. Rama laughed, a sound of genuine surprise and delight that made Alan's heart skip. She turned to him, her silver eyes bright. You continue to surprise me, Alan gasped. Good surprise or bad? He asked, breathless. Instead of answering, she grabbed him by the jacket and kissed him hard. The heart flared energy, swirling around them, sparking through the dead hangar. When they broke apart, the Shadow Clan forces were already retreating, their systems crippled by the artifact's power. Was that, Alan gasped, the legendary weapon-grade flirting you mentioned? Shut up, Rama said, but she was smiling. Aftermath. Back aboard Alpha 9, the Shadow Clan retreat turned into a rout. No one fully understood what had happened, though. Grandmother Tutun looked between Alan, Rima, and the now quiet heart with knowing eyes. The council gathered to declare the third trial complete. What greater proof of loyalty, the grandmother said, than risking one's life for the clan? Alan stood in ceremonial robes, still dazed from adrenaline. Rima stood beside him, expression unreadable, but eyes glinting with unspoken fire. The trials are concluded, the grandmother announced. By ancient law, the marriage may proceed. Rima stepped forward. Grandmother, with respect, I reject the marriage. Gasps echoed. Alan blinked. Wait, what? Her silver eyes locked on his lips, curving in a dangerous smile. Instead, I declare him my personal enemy. The council erupted in shock. Grandmother clapped her hands in delight. Oh, splendid. A chase, how romantic. Alan groaned. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? That, Rima purred, leaning close, depends on how fast you can run. The council chamber was still buzzing with murmurs of shock when Rama's words settled over the assembly like a thunderclap. I reject the marriage, she had said firmly, her silver eyes never leaving Alan's. Instead, by the traditions of our people, I declare him my personal enemy. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The ancient hall seemed to hold its breath. Then the reaction came in waves, gasps, protests, incredulous laughter. Grandmother Tutun, of course, clapped her hands together with delight. Oh, marvelous. How wonderfully dramatic. A chase across the stars, truly the stuff of legend. Wait, Alan blurted, looking from Rima to the council and back again. Enemy. Did I miss a memo here? We just saved the station together. Rima's lips curved into a predatory smile. Exactly. And in doing so, you kissed me, with a sacred artifact in hand. That is a violation of tradition, an act of war, in fact. Alan gaped. An act of what? That kiss saved our lives. Details, Rima said smoothly. The point is, by custom, you must now be hunted. I must pursue you until honor is satisfied. Grandmother beamed positively, glowing with pride. Then it is settled. Alan Gass, you are officially released from the marriage contract, but bound by the declaration of personal enmity. Rima will pursue you across the stars, engaging you in regular battles of honor. She winked mischievously, and possibly other things. The entire chamber erupted into knowing chuckles. Even some of the stoic warriors couldn't hide their amusement. Alan groaned, running a hand through his hair. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? That Rima purred, stepping closer until her silver eyes glinted just inches from his. Depends on how fast you can run. The chase begins. 1 hour later, Alan sat in the cockpit of the Rusty Hope, staring at the stars stretched out before him. His ship, upgraded by Nari engineers and humming with power, had never felt so alive. Systems ran smoother than ever. Weapons gleamed. For once, he actually trusted the old girl not to explode under him. On his sensors, another ship appeared, sleek, deadly, bearing the crimson and silver insignia of the Tutun clan. Rima's personal warship. The comm crackled and her voice came through, rich and teasing. Ready or not, courier. Here I come. Alan grinned despite himself, his heart racing. Catch me if you can, princess. He punched the hyperdrive. The stars stretched into luminous lines and the chase began. Years of pursuit. What followed became the stuff of whispered legend across the sector. Wherever Alan went, Rima was never far behind. She tracked him through asteroid fields, across outlaw space stations, even into the swirling chaos of ion storms. Each encounter was a duel of wit, skill, and sometimes weapons. Sometimes they fought clashing and dazzling battles that left bystanders awestruck. Other times they joined forces against common enemies, their partnership as natural as breathing. Always there was tension, romantic, dangerous, irresistible. Bards in smoky cantinas began to tell stories of the courier and the princess, embellishing the details. Some said their duels ended in blood, others in passionate embraces. The truth, of course, was stranger. It was often both. The turning point. 2 years into their chase in a forgotten temple, orbiting the edge of known space, it ended, at least temporarily. Alan had led Rima into the ruins, planning to trap her in collapsing tunnels. Instead, they found themselves cornered together by mercenaries who wanted the bounty on both their heads. Back-to-back blades and blasters flashing, they fought until the temple crumbled around them. When the dust settled, they were alive only because they'd relied on each other completely. And when the mercenaries fled, Alan realized he was tired of running, not from her, not from tradition, not from whatever this was between them. In the silence of the temple, lit by the faint glow of the heart of Nexus enshrined within, he turned to her. So, marriage instead of war this time. Rima's silver eyes softened just for an instant. Then she smirked. Marriage is just another kind of war, courier, but perhaps one worth fighting. That night, under the temple's shattered dome, they bound themselves together not as enemies, but as partners. It wasn't the official ceremony grandmother had wanted. It was better, private, fierce, undeniably theirs. Epilogue, the next generation. Years later, the galaxy knew the Heart's Hope, a luxury cruiser that was equal parts Nari engineering and human comfort. It drifted in orbit around a pristine blue world, serving as both home and symbol of unity. On its observation deck, Alan Gass stood watching the stars with quiet joy. He looked older now, his stubble a bit thicker, his jacket more weathered, but his eyes still sparkled with the same reckless charm. At his side, Rima trained their eldest daughter, Luna. At 7 years old, Luna's skin shimmered a lighter shade of purple, her black hair catching starlight. She wielded a training blade with fierce determination, though her stance leaned toward improvisation, her father's influence, no doubt. Your form is sloppy, Rima critiqued, though a proud smile tugged at her lips. Too much like your father. All improvisation. Hey, Alan called from his chair where he held their youngest on his lap. That improvisation worked out pretty well for us. The twins' 5-year-olds, Reina and Anka, tumbled through zero-gravity exercises nearby, their silver eyes glowing with mischievous energy. Little Tia, barely 3, sat happily on Alan's knee, tugging at his hair as she tried to braid it like her mother's. Again, Daddy, she demanded in her tiny voice. Tell the story again. The artifact. The kiss. The twins floated over eagerly. Even Luna paused her practice, lowering her training blade. Rayma joined them, sitting gracefully beside Alan, her sunset hair spilling like a banner across his shoulder. Her silver eyes softened as she looked at him. Well, husband, shall we tell it again? Alan chuckled, pulling her close. One more time, then. And he told it the story of a broken ship, some heavy bags, a meddling grandmother, and how the universe had conspired to push a human courier into the path of a warrior princess. The children laughed and gasped in all the right places, though they had heard it 100 times before. As he finished, Rima's hand found their fingers intertwining. They sat in silence for a moment, gazing at the stars. Far away in the Nari capital, the heart of Nexus pulsed quietly in its temple, as if approving the tale being told. Grandmother's Triumph. Back on Alpha 9, Grandmother Tutun presided over yet another naming ceremony, her smile brighter than ever. She watched her great-grandchildren with delight, already planning how to weave their legacy into clan traditions. When asked about the story of Alan and Rima, she always winked and said, sometimes the best way to fall in love is to become enemies first. And the galaxy, in its vastness, seemed to agree. For wherever the courier and the princess were remembered in songs, in whispers and the laughter of their children, the tale carried with it the same truth that between tradition and change, between war and love, between running away and running toward humanity, always finds the balance.